today we're talking about how communities can supercharge tech adoption. So, why are we talking about communities? Number one, I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer, so I can't lecture you on the consensus mechanisms for Mississeti v2 or talk to you about the node distribution on Walrus protocol. But I am a marketer and entrepreneur, and over the last decade have been marketing and building communities and things that I think, quite frankly, translate quite well into Web3 now. So that's reason number one. I'm a community builder. For those that don't know me, I'm David. I'm building Lofi the Yeti on Sui. And reason number two, actually, if you can think about where we're at in crypto, we've come quite far. And I remember when I first got into crypto, there were these sketchy browsers and centralized exchanges. But now, 21st century, 2025, we have advanced. And we've certainly come a long way to a UX UI that's friendly, it's approachable. I don't know when you guys all got into crypto, but now it's as simple as texting someone a link to get into crypto, or ZK login, which is amazing. So again, we are talking about how communities can supercharge tech adoption. Reason number three, I think Sui does a great job. The Sui network, the Missing Labs team, they do an incredible job of supporting communities. And so what we'll be talking about today is where we're at in crypto's cycle, and I think where we're going, and then how communities can actually be a catalyst for that. So how we got here, again, crypto many years ago, even dating back 2009 when Bitcoin started, the early 10s, it was a bit harder to use crypto. But now we have things like Phantom and Slush Wallet, which just came out. And they've been complete game changers. So with this approachable stance, right? You can easily get into crypto. Your friends can get into crypto. My grandmother can get into crypto. It's very easy. And as we like to say, normies have entered the chat. And so this is important for many different reasons. And we're going to talk about how these communities are going to supercharge this adoption. So my thesis is that Web3 organizations that support, engage, incentivize, and pay attention to their communities will grow the fastest and most sustainably. We're going to walk through this thesis, but I want to show you some data first. A couple different charts up here. The one on the top right, something that I think we're all pretty familiar with, TVL, total value locked. It's this big metric that we look at to kind of gauge if crypto is going in the right direction. And over the last 5 years, I mean, really since crypto started, we have been increasing. We've been moving up and to the right, as we like to say. TVL is a good measure of people getting on chain and staying here. And then the bottom right is actually developer wallets. So a pretty consistent uptick. I think we're actually going to see more growth here as crypto becomes easier to use for not only consumers, but for developers as well. So that's the chart in the bottom right. And then in the bottom left, if you can see, it says 2025. We're expected to see a 5x in public wallets that are going to be on-chain by 2030. So a lot of new consumers coming on-chain, a lot of new users, and potentially a lot of new communities. So community-powered brand growth. What does that actually look like? We're going to talk about it in crypto, but again, going back to this thesis just super quickly, I think this also applies in technology today. So I'm going to run through a couple quick examples. I'll try and keep it short, but you guys may be familiar with some of these brands. Gymshark came out of nowhere, billion-dollar brand. How did they do it? With affiliates. Affiliates, a community, people that were supporting their brand, people that were into the culture of Gymshark. Buc-ee's, I'm not sure if you guys are in the US, but Buc-ee's has this like cult following. Anytime they set up a new location, they're like flocked with ambassadors, with people that just love the Buc-ee's brand, the restaurant, really anything about Buc-ee's. It's kind of cult-like. And then the last one, just a random example, Scrub Daddy. I mean, this guy literally turned a sponge brand into $1 billion brand because his community was so avid about maybe making the dishes more fun for their kids or for their family. So again, these communities kind of supercharged the growth of these brands. It's community super fuel. And then we're going to look at a couple different tech examples. Slack, Telegram, Reddit. These are all great examples. I'm sure you guys all use these. But long story short, Slack really started not by going to corporations first. It started as kind of this grassroots movement. A lot of entrepreneurs using it. It was something that I used early 2016. Everyone here uses Telegram. Again, driven by the users, privacy focused, and really pushing the adoption of the platform. And then Reddit, of course, like who doesn't use Reddit? Who hasn't gone on Reddit? It's basically the front page of the internet that's been built by these bloggers, these people that are adding context. So communities that have been powering these billion-dollar tech brands. Other examples, Figma, Canva, Notion. I actually met someone from Notion today and was talking to her about how their community is so developer-focused, but they take a community-first mindset. So communities have supercharged these unicorn brands in tech. Now, before we start talking about crypto, I just want to look at a couple other things too. I think it's really important when you think about this thesis, how supply and demand comes into the equation. Just basic supply and demand, like economics 101. So, a couple memes up here, but if you build it, will they come? I think if you build it, the memes are going to come, that's for sure. And I can tell you that we talk about this a lot in crypto, but ultimately, sometimes that I like to jump in when people are discussing this and say, you know, who really has more power? And if you guys follow me on X, I've been posting about this. I personally believe that the demand in the consumer side of the spectrum has a lot more power. So just some economic food for thought here, right? Number one, let's say you have the best product in the world, the best service in the world, but no one uses it. What do you really have? And then number two, if you kind of layer that on, let's say you do have the best product in the world, best service, best platform, and you have all these users, but then a competitor comes in and they kind of steal your thunder. And your consumers, they move over to that competitor's offer. What are you left with? And then the last thing there, do suppliers more often create demand or do they support it? So again, just some basic economics here, but this is to illustrate the scale of demand and supply. And in free markets, it's continually going up and going down. But a few things. One, demand, it creates value and output. So both of those come on the demand side. The other thing is that consumer choices enforce competition. And sometimes trends actually can create a pull in consumer choice. Another thing that I actually just learned recently when I was digging into this is that, actually think about this for a second. A supply chain truly serves consumers. A supply chain is built, actually, it's engineered to support those consumers. So the final source of revenue actually originates with the consumer spending decisions. And in today's day and age, we have digital media, we have social media, which has completely changed things. The landscape is radically different. So again, I think you can kind of start to see where I'm going with this. The demand side of the curve holds a lot of real power. Therefore, consumers and communities hold real power. In this digital age, communities are growing faster. They're starting to come together. They're turning into a form of energy, which I'll get to in a second, and they're actually powering tech growth and brand growth. And so what we're seeing is that Web3 is attracting new users. It has been for quite some time. Up and to the right, as we all like to see, one of the big reasons that we're here. And the last thing, if you're building in crypto, it's not guaranteed that people are going to come. So you have to entice them to come. You want to invite them to come, just like we invited all these crazy Yetis over here. So moving on, there's a couple of different types of Web3 builders. But if you're building, you're building. I said that from day one. And I truly believe that. Let's take a look at the different types of tech builders. I've broken them up into two different buckets. One are the technical builders or tech builders. The other one is the community builders. So technical builders, think like building protocols, people that are advancing DeFi in general, or launching dApps, the UX UI upgrades for crypto. Some of the best builders over the last year or two have been building these wallets that streamline everything. And then you have other types of builders, community builders. They could be crypto educators. They could be culture or community projects. They could be industry personalities, some of which have been here at this event, which is awesome. And another great example of that is DAOs. So I think DAOs like really encapsulate what a community builder is. And it's not an extensive list. You can certainly have other types of builders. Think like a regulatory builder, someone that's creating the framework for crypto, blockchain, DeFi, Web3, et cetera, to kind of advance and move on to the next era. So these are the two buckets that I've broken people up into and I've talked to a lot of people about. And as I mentioned before, the up and to the right chart that we saw for developers that I think is going to explode here soon, developers are creating a bit of a pull effect, especially on Sui. I don't know if you guys are builders, developers on Sui or working in Mistim, but you're shipping so much, it has this magnetic pull, and it's bringing people into the ecosystem. So again, a couple quick charts. Top left, DEX volume rising. The unique average wallets per chain is going up, and then the active wallets are actually growing in percentage share and rebalancing between these different categories. So again, we're seeing this positive growth, and developers are a big part of that. And I talked about like, where are we in crypto cycle? And what I mean by that is, where are we in crypto's story? Which chapter are we in? And when you guys think about, oh, the cycle, and I don't know if you guys remember February or March, it was kind of gloomy on the timeline. And everyone was posting these and they're like, are we in a bear trap? Are we going down? Is this the end of the world? But I'm actually not talking about these charts, these parts of the cycle here. What I'm talking about is, again, the chapter that we are in crypto. And I think we're entering the chasm. And so what is the chasm? The chasm is a term that Jeffrey Moore uses, and it's about adoption. And so right now, I believe we're somewhere in this 13.5%, the early adopter stage. And what we're actually going to do is try and make this big jump to the rest of the mainstream market. So at the moment, the tech enthusiasts, the innovators, the visionaries, they've come. We're building on Sui, a lot of us. We're building in crypto. But I want to read you something that he says. There's just one catch. There's a chasm between the second and the third stage. It's due to a fundamental difference between what the early adopters and the early majority want in a new product. Crossing the chasm is hard, but it's necessary for mainstream adoption. So we are still very early. Again, if you look at that, there's 86% on the right of the bell curve. So if you guys are in here, you're somewhere in that 13.5 or 2.5%. Now, according to Moore, right, to cross this chasm, we need products, platforms, services, et cetera, that are battle tested, they're popular, and they solve problems. So battle tested meaning that the product or the platform has been around for sufficient time, consumers have put them to the test, it works. Popular, that this is not just a trend, it's here to stay. It has gained adoption and people are actually very interested in it. And you may be seeing it online more, on social media, et cetera. And then does it solve problems? So innovators and early adopters may actually be using something because it solves their problems, but does it solve the problems of the other 86%? So what the actual early majority is, this demographic, they rely heavily on word of mouth approval, and they are looking for success stories. They want to see kind of your personal case study before they jump in. And one thing that they have is they tend to have a communication gap with the early adopters. So this is a major hurdle of adoption that communities can help overcome. Now, let's look at this concept and apply it to crypto, right? Coming back to Web3, is crypto well tested? I'd say so. It's been around 15 years. We have an whole industry built around it now. It's here to stay. I think we can all agree with that. And if not, just the door's back that way. Now, is crypto popular? I think so again, right? We personally believe that crypto is popular, but you're seeing it in retirement portfolios. You see it, on the cover of a BlackRock headline, and A16Z, sorry, head was in the memes. A16Z, it says that there's about 30 to 60 million users that interact on the blockchain every single month. So again, I think it's popular. We're gaining momentum. I think the up and the right continues, but let's think about this. What are the solutions that crypto is offering? And I think this is the biggest question mark if we want to get that other 86%. Again, billions of people on chain. How are we going to show people that crypto solves their problems as well? So if you can think about it, actually, I'll ask, What do you think is the way that we can cross this chasm? What's the solution here? Anyone know? Shout it out. What? There it is. I'm going to give you one of these. Okay, maybe some other questions. Be ready. So when we cross this chasm, we want to leverage the power of communities, right? Think about Bitcoin. I say this jokingly sometimes, but I think it's the first meme. You had these people that truly believed in what Bitcoin stood for, and they basically orange-pilled the world. Now you have on-chain, off-chain, just these global brands like Pudgy Penguins. They sell millions of products online. They have a token. They have NFTs, etc. There's a long list, right? Pepe, Doge. I could go on and on and on. But leveraging the power of communities actually helps you bring people into the ecosystem. And George said this on a podcast recently with Kevin, his podcast, When Shift Happens. Big shout out to him. He's doing great podcasts with the Sui guys. George says, when you build permissionless technology, you have to take the good with the bad and allow people to invent, explore, and pioneer without restrictions. And I think he said something like that. I kind of just paraphrased here. The guy is super brilliant, but he's right. You really need to allow the creativity to flow and people to pioneer and get active and try things out to really amplify those good communities and to see how they are going to help further bring people into crypto. So key takeaways, communities have this magnetic power. It's this big magnet, and they can attract the left curvers, but we can also bring in the early majority. And as the communities get bigger, that magnetic pulse gets a little bit stronger. So if you're building out there, doesn't matter if you're a tech builder or if you're a community builder, I would say try and amplify the signal in the space and tune down the noise and stay at it. And then what we want to do is we want to close this chasm because it's valuable. We can unlock billions, hundreds of millions, wherever we can start, right? We want to unlock these users. And communities that are working towards this are inherently building a ton of potential energy. So think of communities as potential energy, and as they grow, they flow into kinetic energy that actually make a big positive impact for all of us in crypto. So let's talk about how we're going to supercharge adoption. My recommendations, if you are community building, a little bit of alpha here, I would say you should focus on these three things, the 3 C's: culture, connection, and campaigns. So culture transcends time. It's something that you can relate to. It's something that you may not even need to speak the language, but it is far and beyond any norm. And if you look around at Miston and Sui, people are actually building strong culture in different communities and the culture on the ecosystem itself. So focus on building real culture, and that will actually translate into creating true connection. We're all humans. We're wired to connect with each other. I think if you guys are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's physiological needs, there's the need of safety. Those are the bottom two. The third thing right after that is literally connection. So connection is super important, being able to connect to your audience and get them to feel something, get them to relate to something. Super important if you're building a community. And then the third thing are campaigns. Campaigns are a way to turn that potential energy into kinetic energy. So you can do a lot of different things, but I would say make the campaigns relatable, make them fun. Nowadays, we live in the social world. Our attention spans are so short, and I'm a victim of it too. But to ensure that you're actually building the community, you don't want to let it just sit there. You don't want to have it be stagnant. You want to activate some of these campaigns. So those are the 3 C's. I've lived by these for 10 years. Doesn't matter if I was doing brand ambassador programs or doing something with Lofi or helping another project, advising someone. These are all great things to do, community building alpha. And then the last thing that I'll leave you with here is when you are building communities, you want to also think about balancing your incentives. So incentive categories, right? We're all in crypto. What comes to us first are financial incentives. Oh, there's so much money to be made, or I'm going to hit it big, et cetera. But think about crypto. You have so many other incentives here in decentralized finance. One is security and privacy. There's a network incentive. There's time incentive. You also have physical or phygital, as we like to say, incentives. And so create a blend of those incentives to see a good effect. And then incentive characteristics, the speed of the incentive that is received or perceived, and then looking at the input of work or the output of the incentive as well. Those are the 2 big kind of the two big ones for me that I think work the best. Others, though, how much impact did the incentive create in a real-world ecosystem or in a digital ecosystem? And then the expected versus actual incentive payoff. So I would say, again, blending these incentive characteristics, clearly communicate them, and going back, make sure that you have these in campaigns, that they build the connection, they build the culture. And I think that if you do all these things, you can supercharge your platform, your product. You can supercharge your service too, and you can get that adoption that you're really looking for. Again, balance those incentives. Keep in mind, there's less than 100 million people using the blockchain on a monthly basis, but there's 5.5 billion people that use the internet. So we're all still pretty early, and I'd like to remind you we're all going to make it. Thanks for coming. I hope you guys learned something. Again, I'm David with Lofi, and I'll see you out there at the booth.
Round of applause for David from Lofi.
Hey.
Actually, also, phenomenal presentation. There's nobody after you, so I don't know if you want to do Q&A or anything like that, if you're game for it, but we do have the time, and we have a room full of people.
Hit me with it. Anyone has a question or anything?
Cool. Keep the questions brief, though.
How'd you come up with the name Lofi?
There was a lot. I actually called Savon about this at one point. We were joking about this. The name Lofi came from a few different creative brainstorming sessions with Dominic over here. We wanted to build a brand on chain, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Read, Write, Own by Chris Dixon. Great book, but it basically gave me the premise that I could build a brand on chain like I could build one off chain. And with Sui, by the way, it is pronounced Sui.
Say it for the people in the back.
It's pronounced Sui, but people say Sui, or this guy up here, actually, Alex, says Shui because he spent some time in China. And so I was joking with Dominic, and we were kind of like, so we call it Lofi, and he was like, no, and I was like, wait, that could be good, because people will say Lo-Fi or Lofi, and then it just stuck, and we ran with it. And we felt like it was a good ticker, but yeah. Any other questions?
Just, I love following you on X and, your artwork, and you're like always first to reply with some sort of art. Like, what's your secret behind that? Do you have like a bunch of art ready to go? You AI generated, like your reply game is like on point. What are your secrets?
Are you saying on Lofi's account?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually have a couple guys dedicated to that, super creative guys, but we have a ton of content. And this actually ties in with the presentation. If you're building, or you can be building for yourself, or you can be building for your community. You guys know this content is king, especially in today's day and age. There's AI generated art, there's art that you can make yourself, but content really is king. One of the best ways that you can stand out is through your content. So I would say build a bit of a stash, and then start to think about your content. What Pudgy has done really well, what Lofi is trying to do, what Ponky has done, plenty of others, but create content that is relatable. Create content that creates that connection, and naturally you'll create the culture. So I'd say if you do those things, you'll be able to step up your reply game. And other than that, you just got to be active. It's nonstop.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. And I would be glad to know more about your donation because it's quite new idea regarding like how important community is for you. I know that you do a lot of like these ocean plastic things. Could you just describe that, like how you came with this idea, right? Because it's like seems that you really want to change the world through your project, and I really love that. I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, I think someone asked me this last night, and it was kind of like weird saying it out loud, but maybe when I was like 23 or 24, I kind of had this moment where I wanted to make a real impact in the world, and I didn't really have the answers. I feel like I always have the answers for things, so I was a little hurt by it. I just didn't know how I was going to do that. And when I had this opportunity to build on Sui, and when I started to realize that what we were building wasn't for me, it wasn't for us, it was really for everyone. It was for the community. It's for everyone in the world. I realized that we could show that to people too. Like that realization kind of clicked for me, and it allowed me to kind of infuse the Lofi Foundation, to infuse this charitable aspect and to empower people to just step up. Again, I don't think it's the size of the donation that matters. I think it's showing people that you're a part of it. And so when we did the NFT launch, we made sure to kind of tell everyone, like, hey, if you mint one of these NFTs, a portion of what you're doing here is going to help real people. And now there's a school of children in Puerto Rico who are going to have fresh water, and they'll have a blockchain course about how to get into crypto. They'll actually learn about Sui and Walrus and all the amazing stuff the Missing Labs team is building. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hello, thank you very much. I was going to ask, you mentioned you got the opportunity to build on Sui. So when you started off at 2021, if you were to start again, what advice would you give to someone around that age to get into this and go on a path? How does a roadmap look like?
Just to clarify, what advice would I give to a community builder or a technical builder? For a community builder, the advice that I would give is, again, focus on those 3 C's, right? So the culture, the connection, the campaigns, but also really, again, consider your content. And I would say, look at what communities are doing and look at what they're not doing. And I think it's always wise to learn from some of the best leaders in the space or the first movers. But at the same time, you may be able to find some gaps, and you may be able to say, hey, I've never seen a community do this together. Or, hey, there's an opportunity for a community to make an impact. And sometimes you can create a community around an event. You can create a community around a brand. You can create a community around a political movement or anything. And the length or the duration of that community is really up to you as a builder. So you can organize a community that's super effective for achieving one thing and get a little bit of experience and start to build up your resume. And you can do that, and then maybe go on to build a bigger community. So you don't have to take on the whole world at once, and you can kind of stair step up. But I think I would say the last kind of note for you would be just never stop. Like you can be the best community builder in the world. You can work 20 hours a day and do the best things, but people will still come at you, and just know what you're building and why you're building it. And remain focused on that. Again, just turn down the noise, because there's a lot of people in crypto and elsewhere that are going to try and tear you down.
All right, we'll probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Anybody? Going once, twice. Why you got to do that for people to want to raise their hand? I'll tell you what.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, thanks, man, for the very comprehensive presentation. So my question is, right now, there are some people saying that the meme space on Sui is still PvP-ish. I mean, the size of community isn't that big. So do you have plans to poach or to bridge over liquidity or people from other chains, Solana, Ethereum, etc.?
Yeah, I'd say, I think I disagree with what you're saying a little bit. I don't think it's too PvP. I think it's a matter of perspective, but in crypto, right, again, people are very focused on the financial incentives that a lot of the other incentives they miss. So in Sui, it's a lot less versus other chains. I'm not going to name them, but I think a lot of the Sui communities actually get along. There's a very strong focus on NFTs and NFT communities on Sui, which is nice to see. But our goal is to bring anyone and everyone into Sui's ecosystem, to answer your question. So what we do with the NFT collection, from when we launched the token, from our merch, from our partnerships, we always focus not just on supporting and building with the Sui community, but we want to attract other people from other chains, from Web 2, maybe someone who's unfamiliar with technology at all. And there's so many cool things that Sui does now, and I'm sure that it will do in the future. I mean, a lot of alpha from these last 2 days. So our goal is always our vision, I should say, is to bring people into Sui's ecosystem. Doesn't matter where they are located, whether they're in a digital ecosystem or not. And most importantly, again, to do that with a mentality of, hey, we're building with the community, not for the community. Because again, this is a project that we are everyone. Like with Lofi, I say we're all Lofi.
Okay. Any actual last questions? 3, 2, 1. One more time for David from Lofi.